for those of you who have stayed in the room. I think the first the presentations were excellent. I think you've made my job a lot easier. But let me start with thanking Huawei for having me. Thank you to ADGM. I love coming back every year. I'm lucky enough to actually get the stage every year, so I'll try and do my best. I'll try and keep you awake for the next 10 to 15 minutes that I have. Um, do I have a clicker? Sorry. There you go. Right. So what I'm going to talk about is embedded finance, and yeah, let me just start with saying that I think this is a much used term that we are at the most exciting times of any sector at any given time. I've been in this for 20 years, and I've heard someone say that maybe 50 times. Right. I do think we are at a very interesting juncture of financial services. I was at Singapore FinTech Festival a couple of weeks ago, and the theme was re-architecting of the global financial system. And I truly believe that we have already started on that journey, right? And what's very exciting here is that there are a number of innovation platforms, right? And I think it's foolish for a number of us, including some consultants, who take these topics in isolation. I think what we are generally seeing is the convergence of multiple innovation platforms coming together and actually creating a future which is going to look very, very different than what we have been in past of. What's also very interesting is that the change is actually quite exponential, but it's being drip fed into our system. So we actually don't feel the change as much as in the past as you did, right? A lot of topics are just coming around, it's becoming part of our lives because we have mobile phones, and mobile phones have this ability of actually driving change in our behavior without us actually realizing it. I actually compare it to the way that when you boil a lobster, right? You put a lobster in a boiling pot, and he doesn't realize that he's gotten bought. Now, we're not getting boiled, but I'm saying that's how the change is. So I'm not going to get into too much of the jargon out here. There are a number of things going on. There are 4 up here, and I'm sure you could point out to another 40, which is sort of driving the change. The one I'm going to sort of stress on a little bit is around this technology shift, right? Which whether it's cloud, whether it's AI, or a dozen, if not 2 dozen other technologies are coming together, and actually they have an interplay among themselves, and that's what I'll try and get to. Right. So are people comfortable with the term embedded finance? Because it's not a co-brand credit card, right? When we started talking about embedded finance about 5 years ago, people said, well, we've had it forever, right? We've been issuing co-brand credit cards. Co-brand credit cards isn't. Apple Pay is actually a very good example of what embedded finance is, where the customer journey prevails and a transaction becomes as invisible as possible. So the whole concept of embedded finance, in my simple, humble opinion, is actually making financial services as invisible as possible, right? That's just one mantra, which if you can take away from this room, please do so, right? Here's a great analogy. It's not something that I came up with. I actually begged and borrowed this slide off somebody, which shows the difference between an embedded finance and integrated payments, and using that sort of analogy. And I'll give you a very simple example. Payment gateways, which we've all been used to on the back of e-commerce, is an excellent example of integrated payments, right? But it is not embedded, right? As I said, for embedded finance, you're going to soon have biometric-based payments where you're going to go, people in Amazon are walking with their palms. Soon we'll be using different parts of our bodies. I don't want to get too creative with it, but that's what embedded finance is. And I would say download this picture, take a picture. If anyone actually comes up and says, what's embedded finance? Just put this picture in front of them. It's an apartment. Most people in UAE are quite familiar with apartments, right? So I use that example. And embedded finance is not only about payments, right? A lot of what we have actually seen in the last sort of 5 to 7 years is about how we have embedded payments. Now, the reason why we've talked a lot about payments is because arguably it's a lot easier to embed payments. As we get into more complex financial transactions, whether they're wealth, whether it's lending, whether it's savings or others, actually gets more complex, regulation gets more complex, integrations get more complex, banks and traditional incumbents get more precious, right? So there's a lot which needs to happen. If people think that we're going to just do this and embedded finance is going to happen tomorrow, no chance. There's a whole ecosystem which needs to move alongside with it, right? The one very interesting example I'll leave you with is buy now, pay later, right? A lot of people give it a lot of flack. I have always been a flag bearer for BNPL from the very beginning, right? I think there's a lot wrong about it, but I think there's more right about it than there's wrong. And I think over a period of time it is. That's another very good example of how you bring alternative lending, but it's actually blurred the lines between lending and payments. And that's the beauty of embedded finance. And some of the technologies that we are seeing actually makes these more possible and the lines get more blurry. So this is my first slide, which I do think is important for all of you too. For embedded finance to happen, there's got to be a big party. And that party's got to be attended by everybody, right? Any part of this value chain or framework, whatever you'd like to call you, doesn't come to the party, embedded finance doesn't happen. Whether it's technology players like Huawei, whether they're regulators like ADGM, whether they are incumbent banks or insurance companies, whether there are fintechs, and I'm sure there's some founders out here, whether they're embedders, which could be telcos and retail organizations, and actually, most importantly, customers, because they need to understand what they're actually doing with this, right? And that's where lies the complexity. And I do think technology is playing, whether it's cloud, whether it's AI, whether it's any other thing, is playing a very critical role in making all these parts of this framework and value chain more comfortable with the concept of the different, right? And that's the whole concept. It is different. Here is a slide, again, which actually has been written by someone I actually know and I have a lot of respect for. If embedded finance happens and it actually lives up to its potential, I say it even lives up to 50% of its potential, it will re-architect the way we do financial services, right? And here is just one picture which manifests that change, right? Today, most of our banking actually happens here, right? And you can see Huawei has a key role to play there, which they've obviously said they are. But imagine if you start shifting towards the right, and that's your entire value pool, you're going to actually have financial services being delivered by everybody. And I'll give you a number if you guys are not aware. Starbucks today holds over 160 billion, if I'm not wrong, dollars of customer deposits in a bank account. I think makes it the sixth largest institution in the US with regards to holding customer balances. And it does it on the back of a simple prepaid card, right? And that's the power. So you're actually going to see actors, whether they're telcos who've obviously taken the progressive lead. I used to work for a retailer and sort of, I guess, championed some of that embedded finance stuff in the UAE initially. But you're actually going to see embedded finance come to you in different forms and shapes and through different channels. And that's where it actually becomes interesting. You know, topics like financial inclusion, right? There's no better way to close financial inclusion but through channels who those people who need to be included can be. Shopify is a great example, right? Who uses technology incredibly well in terms of unlocking all this potential with financial services. Again, a number for you to remember. Shopify actually generates 70% of their income out of financial services, only 30% out of their core business. For me, Shopify is the greatest fintech player in the market, right? But that's just my opinion. You don't have to believe in it. Big numbers, I don't want to waste time. You can just Google all this. Yes, there's obviously a bias towards retail, but embedded finance actually lives across the board. And I guess this is the challenge with technology players have like Huawei, that it's not just about telcos, but you need to talk to retailers, you need to talk to automotive players, you need to talk to healthcare providers, etc., so on and so forth, right? I know I have 1 minute, but I'm going to take three, right? This is an important slide. And I guess number 7 is why we are here, right? Why we're talking about embedded finance now is that you can actually see that there is an interest across the board for making embedded finance work. The regulators might want to make it happen because of financial inclusion. I'm just giving you an example. An embedder wants to happen because they want to sell more shirts, right? A customer wants to do it because they don't want to visit branches and have long conversations with their banks, right? There are investors who see tremendous opportunity for unlocking potential beyond just investing in fintechs, but they want to embed in players. And technology players now have these technologies, which makes this super efficient, highly scalable, extremely safe, and so on and so forth, right? So that brings me to my 2 topics I'm going to say. So I could have 10 of these boxes out here, right? If not 20, right? I'll just pick on 2, right? One is AI. Now, I don't think a day passes in our life when we don't hear something about AI. It's been around for a long time. Guess what? I put embedded finance, fintech, AI in one presentation, right? That's awesome. right? Claps me out here. So AI, we're not going to get into. I think what I want to talk a little bit about is cloud. And the reason I want to talk about cloud is that it's not as overt, right? People don't talk about it as much, but it's actually been doing a lot for us already, right? And here are some examples, right? So I think we heard about real-time processing, the ability to manage large data sets, be able to process in real time, do it in a safe and secure manner, right? I think it's been a God's gift, and I'm not a religious person here, but the God's gift to startups, right, who don't have to build on-prem, and we need more and more of these disruptors to come in, right? It has actually improved arguably the trickiest part of any financial services, which is around credit provisioning, right? And finally, but no, but not least, is that it is allowing new use cases, right? So we've had RFIDs forever. It's been around longer than I've been alive, right? And I'm an old guy, right? With IoT combined with cloud, you will actually see a massive transformation happening in the automotive sector. You'll see the supply chain angle changing. You got huge opportunities in supply chain. And she wants me to keep quiet. All right, here's what I'll leave you with, and that's my goodbye slide. They did tell me I had 10 minutes, but unfortunately, you never can put me on stage with less than 15. But hopefully, this was useful. You can always grab me outside. I write every day on the topic. If you're bored, you can follow me on LinkedIn, and you'll hear what my points are. Thanks a lot.